Welcome to the third installment of the CG Character Fuse to Mixamo to Photoshop. In this segment we are going to edit textures. Now's the time to edit some textures here in Photoshop. Particularly more than what you could do in Fuse is bring in graphics that can run across the textures of the character. It could be a tattoo design across the skin of the big brute character you downloaded. Or in this case, I'm going to put something interesting across the leather of her jacket. I did a little searching and I found myself a cool SVG graphic to download. The textures inside of the Photoshop format are a smart object workflow. And in this case, these smart objects here inside the diffuse map for the lady's top. Let's go ahead and double click that. This will open the diffuse map. It's actually a Photoshop format that's hidden when you saved your demo lady. We can paint into this. We can bring in other layers. And if you pay attention, you see how the textures are flattened out. Well, let's learn something about masking and layering while we're at it. Here's the background layer in my layers panel. I'm going to bring in, with a place embedded command, that SVG. It's a new layer. While I'm ready to place it, I'm just going to go ahead and edit it, rotate it, and put it into position. I'm going to scale it up, get a cool position going on with everything. When I hit the Enter key, I've got a new layer. If I save this, it's going to update over here. But what we'll notice is that the graphic is running across other textures in other parts of the model. Kind of cool how it's running across the back. But let's prevent it from running over into the sleeves. So let's reset this. Let's go to default camera and let's try again. But when I go to default camera, I realized I had moved the model quite a bit. So what we want to do is reset its position. Let's go back to default camera. And let's put her back in place. I slid her forward by accident. Let's slide her back. What you want to do is target and get your character back on that red and blue X. Notice that she's hanging out through the ground. I'm going to use this button to reset her back to the ground. Move her forward a little bit. And there she is. Now that I got my character back in the right viewport by resetting its default camera and moving her around with the controls, I'm back on track. I'm going to go back over to this smart object that's still open. And let's talk about keeping it from rolling over top of these other elements, such as this is a flap. There's some other bits and pieces. Let's mask it to just the front and the back of the jacket. Let's add a mask. This is the new mask icon. Be sure that you are painting in the mask itself, and it's highlighted with a thin white outline. Let's use a brush. Hotkey is B for brush. Let's choose a brush. From general brushes, I chose a hard round brush. And you can change the size of your brush over here on the document with the right and left bracket keys. Let's zoom in. Let's look at this. This is a flap for the jacket. It's happening right about here. And it's out of sync with the pattern. Let's leave it plain leather. This is a layer. In the mask, I'm going to paint with black. If I'm painting with black, it's going to hide pixels. If I paint with white, it's going to reveal. X key swaps between black and white. So let's go with black. Hide. And if I make a mistake, whoops, I can switch back to white with the X key. So what I'm going to do is follow along and paint with black and clean up these edges. I don't have to be real exact. I just want to have a clean workspace. I might leave a little bit of an overlap. Here's a trick. As I'm painting, I like to use a shift and click combination. And you see when I'm painting roughly, it's making a beeline between my clicks. If I wanted to, I can paint real exact and slow down, but that's not necessary today in this spot. So let's speed it up. Now that I've gone around the outside edge, I'm going to tackle all of the bits and pieces that are sticking out over the back. Let's speed this up. Now that I've got a foothold on where I've edited out in the mask, I'm just going to use a selection tool to get the rest. Your really good friend in this moment is the lasso tool, and its sister, the polygon lasso tool. With the polygon lasso tool, you can make broad clicks to encompass when you want to fill with a color, such as black. That hides in the mask. Let's speed this up. Your friend in this moment is Shift F5, which is the keyboard shortcut for the fill command. Control D, and you can deselect quickly. There's no sense in always going back to the edit menu to do these things. Learn those keyboard shortcuts. And if you want to see everything, Control 0 puts your document, the flag is going across the parts that I want and not going across the parts that I don't, except we know there is a cool zipper in this. So I'm going to reduce the opacity of my layer so that I can see that zipper. Make sure I'm going to paint into the mask. Be careful, don't paint into the smart object. If you accidentally do with the brush tool, it's going to ask you if you want to rasterize. Don't rasterize if you have a smart object. Keep it editable. Cancel. Aim carefully. Work in the right spot. Let's paint that zipper away. Let's speed this up. Okay, now that I've got the zipper painted out, I'm going to return back to 100% opacity on my layer, and let's just do a save. Let's check our other file, and we see, make sure that you switch back over to the move arrow, the move tool, and then we can get to our camera, and let's zoom in. Now the texture is not mapping across the leather flap. It matches our other pocket. It's not running along the zipper. We did an okay job in painting that out, except for right there. So you can go back and edit it, some of the parts and pieces. I'm going to speed it up and fix it and update. Okay, that looks a little better. Now, you can leave this real default looking new leather color. It looks pretty good. Let's zoom around a little bit and see what it looks like. Let's rotate our lady. See it from the back. Looks pretty cool. But maybe not the most authentic. So let's go to your layer and play with some blend modes. Right here we've got choices, and I found out in this case overlay looks nice. Notice the state change that happened. Layers are still there. Let's save. Take a look. Looks a little more authentic. But now I know how to edit the gloves because I made some poor choices in the tone of the blue over in Fuse. So let's edit the gloves. I'm going to speed this up, use some adjustment layers like hue saturation. Let's go to work. So that looks pretty good to me. I'm going to close my smart objects. Take a look at my work. Another way to zoom around without goofing up your camera and your viewport for your character is just to switch over to the zoom tool, and this will zoom around the image as if it were a pixel image for a moment. So I'm looking at these shoes and they're a little too pink to me. I'm going to examine my work and it looks pretty good. There's this flap, there's the zipper, and yes, the character looks a little low quality. We're zoomed in far, but this will come out better in the render process later on in our journey here. Control 0 puts your canvas in view. So I'm going to speed things up and edit the shoes just a little bit. Alright, looks good to me. Let's save ourselves a lot of trouble. Let's back up a copy of the work we did on the top and the shoes and the gloves. let's do this. Double click. It's going to open up my jacket, and I'm going to save it as a regular Photoshop file. Notice that I'm in a temporary spot right now in the file structure. I'll find my place. This is my backup copy. And I'm going to close that. Remember, it's a new copy somewhere else other than inside the smart object. Same thing with the shoes. Let's save that as a regular Photoshop file in my space, and it's a backup. Lastly, I did some work on the gloves. Save as. Regular Photoshop file, not in this temporary folder. We'll see why in a second. We're happy. Let's save our work. Now's the time to choose the pose for the personality, the action pose. Let's go through the same. New, 2800 pixel square image. New 3D layer from file. I'm choosing the samba dancing. Now, create a video timeline. And find that spot that you like the most for your character. He or she may be jumping up onto a ledge, falling flat on the ground, whatever fits your story. In this case, we want a standing pose for an action. And I'm kind of digging something like this. Make sure I got the skeleton selected. Rotate her. And this is the format or the process that you would use. From here, you can take this pose into another layer. You can compose your comic book cover. Use it to draw from when you're sketching out, say, a storyboard cell. However you guys want to tackle projects 3 and 4, and use this as a reference or a insert layer to paint over top of. Here we're going to work and make this one of the character poses in our presentation. So I'm going to save my work. That's my action pose. But where's her jacket? Let's fix that. Remember, I saved those backup copies of the work. The diffuse map, there they are. Shoes, top, and gloves. Let's replace without having to do that work all over again. This would be a lot easier if we could have signed into the cloud and our animations are here, and while we had the Union Jack on the leather jacket, we could have chosen a new pose and saved as, but we got to do something different, and this is a workaround. But let's just go ahead and open. Here's the top. That's my backup copy. I'm going to undock it. Now over here in my new pose, let's go to edit the top. I'm going to undock that too. Now, with these two files open, where I can see my layers in one and my flat background in the other, I'm going to use my Move tool and simply drag over all of that work. Now, if you hold down the Shift key while you're doing this and let go, it's going to drop in the exact spot. Drag over, hold the Shift key with the Move tool, and now I can close this. This is where I was a second ago, and I drag that in. So let's save this. Voila. without a lot of trouble, I have put this upon my posed character in the exact same spot I was using for the standing character. Pose. Terrific. Now let's fix the work I did on the shoes and the gloves. I'm going to speed this up. Very good. So now I have those three things updated: shoes, gloves, and the jacket. And I'm ready to save my work and move to the next step. So let's review what I did. We created the character in Fuse, and we exported that to a way that we can upload into Mixamo. We downloaded 3 different poses from Mixamo, and then we made 3D layers from loading one of those at a time, and we created a Photoshop file for a standing pose, and we created a Photoshop file for the action pose.